breakthroughs in mental health treatment, the crossroads in the legalization of sports gambling, and shocking comments from a world leader in South Asia. I'm Martin Rather. This is The Underreported. We begin with a segment we call Something You Might Have Missed. Fake news. It's a phrase that Americans have heard over and over during the past 2 years. But what are the political implications in the real world? In a recent mayoral race in Lewiston, Maine, fake news helped turn the election upside down and could do so again for the 2018 midterms. A December 12th runoff in the Lewiston mayor's race pitted progressive Democrat activist Ben Chin, who is supported by Bernie Sanders, against conservative Republican city councilor Shane Bouchard. A week before the election, a website named the Maine Examiner published emails purporting to show that Chin had called voters in the city, quote, a bunch of racists, end quote. But there is no news site called the Maine Examiner, although a visit to the website looks somewhat like the layout of the online version of USA Today, a legitimate news outlet. Just last week, the director of the Maine Republican Party admitted that he runs the Maine Examiner. Democrats immediately filed ethics and campaign finance complaints. This won't help Ben Chin, however. He lost by just 145 votes in that runoff. This is not just happening in Maine. In Arizona, the Arizona Monitor endorsed State Senator Kelly Ward in her bid to replace Jeff Flake in the U.S. Senate. Ward touted the Monitor's endorsement across her social media platforms in advance of the August 2018 primary. What's interesting about the Monitor's site is there's basically no other news on that site except pro-Ward commentary. We're likely to see many more cases of candidates skirting ethical guidelines to promote fake news. And let's call this for what it is, a theft of trust. This country has trusted reporters ever since Upton Sinclair's The Jungle brought us the Food and Drug Administration back in 1906. Let's hope our elections can be decided by voters basing their decisions on real facts. Now, on to our national correspondents. Scientists are on their way to a possible breakthrough in mental health, a topic that impacts 45 million Americans today. Our correspondent Olivia Leveda from California has more on the story.
According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. are impacted by anxiety disorders. June Martinez was diagnosed with anxiety disorder at age 9.
For me, I'll have the sweats and I'll just be panicky and anxious.
In a study published in the Neuron Science Journal on January 31st, a team of researchers studied the brains of mice and found specific brain cells that appeared to control anxiety levels. During the study, scientists placed mice in a maze that included open and closed areas. Now, it is important to remember here that mice typically fear open spaces. The team observed the activity of brain cells at the bottom of the hippocampus, a part of the brain that shares a connection with anxiety. The cells became more active when the mice entered open spaces. The scientists then controlled this anxious behavior by using optogenetics, a process that uses light to control cells, in this case, neurons. When the scientists turned down the cell's activity, the mice became less anxious. NPR reports that although the research is at an early stage and lab findings in animals don't always pan out in humans, researchers hope the study will lead to better treatments for anxiety disorders. June is hopeful for a breakthrough.
Anything where we're breaking new ground on the disorder and we're able to figure out even anything, the slightest bit of information is going to help somebody.
From California, I'm Olivia Leveda, The Underreported.
Will we see the legalization of sports gambling? Katie Filling of Penn State University with the story of an upcoming federal case which may decide the role of the $500 million industry.
Are you in a betting mood? Well, there is legislation in the works that could legalize sports gambling in some states. According to a February 12, 2018 article from NBC News, lawmakers in at least 20 states think it could become legal by summer when the case heads to the Supreme Court. Christie versus the NCAA was filed by former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, to get rid of a federal law that prevents states from allowing sports gambling. The 1992 Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act doesn't actually ban sports wagering nationally, but instead simply says states can't permit it. Although a few states like Nevada have gotten around this law under a grandfather clause. If the Supreme Court votes in favor of striking down this law in late June, House Bill 1325, written by Indiana State Rep. Alan Morrison, would move forward to propose allowing sports wagering in places like casinos, racetracks, and riverboats. It would also attempt to get licensing and regulation on mobile sports gambling through phone apps. The details are still being sorted out, but the bill was created in collaboration with sports leagues like the NBA. The Supreme Court heard New Jersey's challenge to the law through oral arguments, and after debate, it seems likely that the court will side in their favor. Reporting from State College, Pennsylvania, I'm Katie Filling for the Underreported.
Thanks, Katie. Now to Madison Smith of Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas, with the story of incendiary comments from the Filipino president.
From the fight to women's suffrage in the 1920s to the Me Too movement of today, women still continue to fight for equality. Our latest battle in the war for equality takes us to the Philippines. Addressing a crowd of over 200 former communist soldiers, Filipino President Ricardo Duterte made derogatory, violent, and misogynistic remarks against women. One remark saying that, quote, "We will not kill you, we will just shoot you in the vagina," end quote, referring to female guerrilla fighters. This is just the latest of derogatory comments Duterte has made towards women. Congresswoman Emmy De Jesus calls Duterte a, quote, "macho fascist," and says that his quotes and remarks were, quote, "anti-woman." Duterte's spokesperson, Representative Harry Roque, dismisses all allegations that Duterte is sexist and misogynistic. The Philippines are arguably the U.S.'s closest allies in this region, due to the fact that they used to be a U.S. territory and their longtime standing military agreements. However, Duterte has moved the South Asian nation away from the U.S., instead planning to align with China as a part of a $13.5 billion economic deal, also intending to align himself with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Duterte's comments towards women will further isolate his country. From Huntsville, Texas, Madison Smith, The Underreported.
Let's end by looking back and then looking forward. This week in 1862, the Legal Tender Act was passed by the U.S. Congress, which made paper money the legal tender over gold and silver. Historians believe that this act may have saved the United States from widespread economic collapse during the Civil War. The act is the original basis for our current Federal Reserve System. Now, looking forward, this week the Nebraska legislature is expected to consider up to 4 bills which could regulate cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Siacoin, as well as larger blockchain technology. Blockchain technology uses a decentralized network of computers in order to seemingly provide a more secure network for financial transactions. Currently, they're unregulated at the state level. Legislators in Lincoln are beginning to consider how their state can play a role in this new economic sphere. Thank you for joining us this week for The Underreported. If you have any stories that you believe are underreported, please comment below, and we'll do our best to get back to you. I'm Martin Rather, for The Underreported. Have a great week.